Hi guys. Tonight we travel back tens of thousands of years to a world where the stars are the only streetlights and the night wind is not just cold but dangerous. You step outside your shelter of rock and smell the sharp frost in the air. Somewhere in the dark, a wolf howls, the sound long and hollow, rolling across the frozen plain. You can almost feel your breath turning to ice in front of your face. There is no hum of electricity, no crackling fireplace, no cozy blanket waiting by the couch. Only the thin layer of hide across your shoulders. You probably would not survive this night. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And tell me in the comments where you are listening from and what time it is there. Now, dim the lights and imagine yourself in that world before comfort, before heat, before anyone truly understood how to make fire stay alive through the night. The air bites your fingers as you pull the animal skin tighter around your body. You move through the darkness toward a rocky overhang, hoping the wind will ease. The ground crunches beneath your feet, frozen mud and grass stiff like glass. The stars above are brutal in their clarity, glittering like shards of ice. Every sound is magnified in this vast emptiness, the rustle of dry leaves, the distant grunt of a reindeer herd, the sigh of your own tired lungs. You crouch at the mouth of a shallow cave, your body trembling as if the earth itself is shaking. Inside, shadows move, not monsters, but your people. A small band of early humans, huddled together, wrapped in the pelts of wolves and bears, sharing what little warmth they can. One child coughs, the sound echoing softly off the stone walls. A woman beside you shivers in her sleep, her breath visible even in the dark. This is how it begins, this long story of warmth and survival. You might think the discovery of fire solved everything, but for countless generations before that, people had to face nights like this with nothing more than ingenuity, body heat, and stubbornness. Historians still argue whether these early humans truly lacked fire or simply failed to keep it alive during deep winters. The evidence is thin, scattered across layers of ash, bones, and soot that tell a story both impressive and tragic. Imagine your own body in that world. You have no fireplace, no chimney, no matches, no metal tools. What you have instead is the knowledge of where to hide from the wind. You have instinct, the sense that the south side of a slope stays warmer, that dry grass stuffed into your clothing can trap air and heat. You learn to breathe through your nose to keep warmth inside. Your body becomes the tool, and survival becomes an art. The smell inside the cave is heavy with animal fat and damp stone. Everyone presses closer, forming a small wall of bodies. It is awkward, sweaty, but essential. You feel the heat of others against your skin, a quiet reminder that warmth is not just a luxury but a shared act. Some modern researchers call this thermal cooperation, the way early humans instinctively shared body heat to preserve energy. It is not so different from penguins huddling together in Antarctica today. Outside, snow begins to fall in silence, thick flakes drifting down like feathers. The world softens, and even the wolves grow quiet. You think of how strange this must have felt the first time the temperature dropped and the earth seemed to turn against its own inhabitants. You close your eyes and imagine the prehistoric mind at work, trying to understand why breath turned to clouds, why fingertips burned with pain, why the sun abandoned the horizon so early. Maybe, somewhere deep inside, fear turned into wonder. There are no words for winter yet, no calendars to mark its length, only the experience, the chill that crawls up your spine, the hunger that tightens your stomach, the joy when the sky brightens again. And yet, in that endless struggle, humanity learned patience. You can almost hear the lesson whispering through the centuries. Warmth is fleeting, but endurance is forever. A mainstream historical fact tells us that some Neanderthal sites show traces of seasonal adaptation, thicker clothing, deep shelters, and communal sleeping pits lined with moss. They were not primitive fools, they were problem solvers in furs. And one quirky detail still fascinates scientists. traces of burned animal bones that might not have come from campfires at all, but from using slow, smouldering dung piles to warm shelters indirectly. It is as if they were experimenting with chemistry without knowing it. You sit quietly in the half-dark, imagining the hum of breath and heartbeat blending into one rhythm. The icy air outside presses against the cave walls, testing for weaknesses, while inside, the warmth of human life fights back, silent but fierce. Maybe that battle between cold and body heat is what defined us. Maybe that is where courage was born, not in war, not in conquest, but in the quiet determination to outlast the night. The moon rises higher. Its light filters through the cave mouth, silver and blue, touching the faces of the sleeping group. You notice how peaceful they look despite the danger. There is beauty even in this raw survival, a kind of humility in accepting that nature is stronger, but not unbeatable. You pull the hide closer and let your breathing slow. Far away, the frost glints on the plains like crushed diamonds. You think about how this same cold, sculpted glaciers carved valleys and drove entire species to adapt or vanish. You wonder how many nights like this humanity endured before taming the flame. You wonder what it felt like to see the first spark, to hold it trembling in the dark, realizing that the long war against the cold might finally have a weapon. For now, though, there is only you, your breath, and the steady sound of the sleeping group. The cave is your world, the darkness is your ceiling, the cold is your teacher. And as your body begins to relax, you can almost feel time stretching backward, the centuries folding in on themselves, carrying you closer to the moment when humanity finally learned to make warmth instead of just borrow it. The first light of morning filters through the mouth of the cave, grey and thin. You feel it more than see it, a faint glow against your eyelids. Your body is stiff from the cold ground, your breath forming small clouds in the air. Outside, the world is wrapped in frost. Each blade of grass stands coated in white, every rock crusted with a shimmer of ice. You pull your fur wrap tighter, stand, and listen to the silence of a frozen dawn. The air is sharp and brittle. It feels like it could crack. The people around you begin to stir, their faces pale and hollow, lips blue from the night. No one speaks at first. There is only the soft sound of movement, hides rustling, bones creaking. You glance toward the cliffside that shelters your small group. This overhang has been home for weeks, maybe months. It is not perfect, but it is life. The wind rolls over the open plain like a slow wave, and the rock face breaks it just enough to make sleep possible. Caves, cliffs, and hollows are the first shelters of the human story. You imagine generations choosing them for safety, warmth, and the illusion of permanence. In some parts of Europe, archaeologists have found traces of early humans who built rough walls across the front of caves, sealing themselves in like hibernating bears. They dragged heavy branches, stones, and mammoth bones to block the opening, turning nature into architecture. Historians still debate whether these structures were meant purely for warmth or also for protection from predators. Perhaps both. You picture a winter storm battering the land. The wind shrieks through the trees, snow flies sideways, and the temperature drops low enough to freeze breath mid-air. Inside the cave, people press closer together, wrapped in hides. The floor is layered with dry grass, moss, and leaves that crackle softly as bodies shift. The cave smells of damp fur and old smoke. You run your hand along the stone wall, feeling its smoothness, its chill, its quiet endurance. This is no cozy cabin. This is a tomb that chooses not to kill. Then you step outside and see the others building something new. They are not waiting for caves anymore. They are inventing their own kind of home. On the open plain, bones of great animals rise like pillars. Mammoth ribs curve overhead, tusks form arches, and hides stretch across them to make walls. You can almost hear the slow creak of sinew cords pulled tight. The wind hisses, but it cannot get in. You watch the small structure take shape, half art and half desperation. There is a mainstream historical fact that remains astonishing. In Eastern Europe, Some Ice Age communities built entire houses out of mammoth bones, arranged in circles up to 6 meters wide. The bones were stacked and interlocked, covered with hides and packed with snow for insulation. Inside, archaeologists found tools, ornaments, and sleeping pits. They even discovered small piles of powdered red ochre, perhaps used to decorate or bless the shelter. Imagine the eerie beauty of that, living inside the skeleton of a giant animal that once ruled the plains. One quirky detail that still puzzles scientists is how these people managed to transport such massive bones. Some think they scavenged carcasses left by cold or disease. Others believe they hunted and planned for construction months in advance. Maybe the truth lies somewhere between practicality and reverence. Building a home from a mammoth might have felt like borrowing its strength. You walk closer to one of these shelters in your mind. The hide walls ripple gently as wind passes outside. Inside, the air feels trapped and warmer. The faint smell of animal fat seeps into everything. A mother sits near the center, sharpening a tool from reindeer antler, while a child plays with a small carved figure in the dirt. The space feels alive. In that moment, the difference between cave and house disappears. It is not the material that matters. It is the feeling of safety. Historians still argue whether these bone huts were year-round homes or seasonal refuges. Some evidence suggests families returned each winter, rebuilding and reusing the same spots. Others believe they were temporary, built during hunts when herds migrated north. Either way, the pattern is clear. Humanity was learning to master its environment, one clever trick at a time. You can almost sense the spark of architecture flickering to life in their minds. You move through the site as though walking through time. Everywhere you look, survival leaves fingerprints, small piles of stone tools, patches of ash, broken bones with marrow scraped clean. You wonder how it felt to wake up each morning and decide which danger mattered more, the cold, the hunger, or the unknown. You wonder what it was like to look at the endless snow and imagine the warmth of a sun that never seemed to rise high enough. The wind changes, carrying the faint sound of cracking ice from the nearby river. You can picture a small group walking there now, wrapped in hides, dragging branches to repair their shelter. Their footprints leave dark impressions in the snow, each one a small act of defiance. The cold does not care about bravery, but the human heart keeps making it anyway. Inside the bone hut, the air grows thick with breath. Someone hums softly. Maybe a lullaby, maybe nothing at all. The rhythm is steady, comforting. You sit and listen. You imagine yourself in that circle, feeling the same mix of exhaustion and fragile hope. There are no words for civilization yet, but this moment of warmth inside walls built by human hands is where it begins. The walls shiver in the wind. A few flakes of snow drift in through the seams, melting on warm skin. You close your eyes, hearing the faint heartbeat of the group around you. Somewhere outside, wolves move through the snow, silent and patient. But you are safe for now, in your shelter of stone and bone, in the quiet cradle of invention. And as the night begins to fall again, you understand something simple yet profound. Warmth is not just about heat. It is about the choice to stay together, to build something between life and death, to refuse to give the cold the final word. You wake before the others, your body half numb, your breath misting in the dim light. The air is dry and sharp, the kind that slices through lungs before settling like smoke inside the chest. You pull your hide tighter and glance around. Shapes stir in the half-dark, bodies tangled together in a heap of survival. It is not elegant, but it works. Heat clings to you like a loyal ghost. As you stretch your legs, you notice how the bodies closest to the center of the group are always the warmest. Those on the outside shiver first, their skin paling, their movements sluggish. Without words, people shift positions, rotating slowly through the night. It is an instinctive choreography, one that keeps everyone alive. Researchers have long confirmed that early humans understood the power of shared warmth long before they mastered fire. In some Ice Age dwellings, Archaeologists have found layers of flattened grass and animal fur where bodies clearly slept pressed close together, sometimes in groups of 6 or more. The evidence suggests that human survival was not simply a matter of luck, but of connection. The body itself was a tool, and warmth was a shared resource. One lesser-known curiosity is that some modern hunter-gatherer groups, like the Hadza of Tanzania, still sleep in rotating clusters on cold nights, mirroring what their ancestors once did. The behavior is not nostalgic, it is efficient. Heat moves from one body to the next, creating a living network of temperature. You imagine this ancient logic how, even in silence, people learned that touch could save them. The morning wind slips through the gaps of your shelter. You feel it snake along your neck, cold enough to raise goosebumps. Someone beside you groans softly and shifts closer. The warmth returns, subtle but steady. You realize how deeply social warmth is, how it links breath to breath, life to life. Debate continues among researchers about whether early humans developed specialized sleeping formations intentionally or by accident. Some argue it was trial and error. Others believe it was learned behavior passed down through observation. Whatever the truth, the result is clear. Shared body heat became a primitive but powerful defense against extinction. You think of how animals still use this same trick. Penguins huddle in great circles, taking turns on the outside. Wolves curl around one another. Even small rodents form heat balls during frost. You wonder if, in some unspoken way, humanity borrowed its wisdom from the beasts it watched. The line between human and animal was not yet thick. It was porous, blurred, and practical. Outside the cave, the sun peaks weakly above the horizon, spilling pale light across the snow. The world seems empty, but it is alive with quiet motion. Steam rises from a herd of bison in the distance. Ravens circle overhead, their cries echoing through the frozen air. You step outside, feeling the warmth of sleep fade as the cold claims your skin again. You rub your arms, stamping your feet, trying to stir heat from inside yourself. You begin to understand the hidden genius of this ancient world. Before inventions, before tools, the first defense was cooperation. No hero survives the cold alone. Inside, a mother wraps her child in a blanket of fox fur, holding the small body against her chest. The child stirs, sighs, and falls back asleep, tiny hands gripping the edge of the fur. You smile at the scene. It is tender, timeless. Even now, millennia later, people still cradle one another in winter, still share blankets, still rely on the warmth of someone nearby. The question still puzzles modern archaeology. Did the early groups recognize emotional comfort as part of their survival, or was it purely physical instinct? Perhaps one led to the other. Perhaps warmth gave rise to intimacy, and intimacy gave rise to empathy. In the quiet darkness of those prehistoric nights, something more than temperature was exchanged. You imagine the slow rhythm of breathing, the soft press of bodies under layers of hide, the heartbeat of a small group learning to be more than animals. Warmth becomes not just survival but belonging. The cold outside becomes the border between us and them, between home and oblivion. Later that morning, the group gathers near the edge of the plain, faces turned toward the faint sun. They absorb what little heat it offers, faces calm, eyes half closed. No one speaks, but the bond between them is visible. The body is more than a vessel, it is a shelter for others. You look around at the landscape stretching endlessly in all directions. The world seems vast and indifferent, but within that indifference, humanity learned the most precious lesson: to depend on one another. Not through speech, not through belief, but through skin and warmth and shared breath. The cold will always return. The wind will always find new ways to creep in. But as long as people stay close, as long as bodies lean together, there is a small circle of defiance glowing in the dark. And in that fragile, flickering circle, the story of human compassion quietly begins. The cold bites harder today. You wake with frost forming along the edges of your fur wrap and feel the stiffness in your hands as you flex your fingers. The air smells faintly of wet animal hide and the ashes of a long-dead ember. Someone nearby sneezes, a small echo in the vast silence of the cave. You pull your covering tighter and feel the rough texture of the hide against your cheek. It is warm enough to keep you alive, but barely. Outside, the world is still locked in ice. The trees glitter like frozen bones, their branches heavy with frost. The sky hangs low, pale and endless. You think about the miracle that you are even here, breathing, awake, and clothed. There was a time when early humans had nothing more than scraps of fur scavenged from carcasses. Now in this moment, you wear something stitched, something shaped by intention. Archaeological evidence suggests that the art of layering animal skins began more than 40,000 years ago. Early people did not just drape hides across their shoulders, they learned to shape them, to cut and tie them for maximum warmth. They discovered that layering thin furs could trap air better than one thick pelt, creating a kind of natural insulation. You imagine them experimenting, adding grass or moss between layers, testing, learning, surviving. One fascinating little detail found at ancient sites is that some bone needles are so small and precise, they could only have been used for delicate sewing. Imagine that level of care in a world where survival was measured in degrees of temperature. Someone took the time to thread sinew through tiny holes, to stitch hides edge to edge. It was not just function, it was craft. You can almost picture a group huddled by faint light, sewing by touch, fingers red and raw but determined. Some experts remain divided on whether clothing at that time served more than just protection. Was it also decoration, identity, or status? Perhaps a beautifully worked fur cloak was not only warm, but a statement of skill or belonging. The question is still open, and that uncertainty makes the past feel closer, more human. You run your hand along your own covering. The fur is thick, patched from different animals. It smells faintly of smoke and oil. Every stitch feels like a story. Each thread ties you to generations who fought the same cold in the same way. The hides rustle softly as you move, and the sound reminds you of leaves in autumn. You realize that even in this age of raw survival, humans were learning style, creativity, and self-expression. Most anthropologists now agree that the invention of tailored clothing was one of humanity's greatest leaps forward. It allowed migration into harsher climates, opened new lands for settlement, and gave people control over their comfort for the first time. The clothing was not just armor against the elements, it was liberation from fear. An unexpected discovery hints that early humans even experimented with tanning techniques. Traces of plant oils, animal brains, and ash mixtures have been found on ancient hides, suggesting they treated skins to make them more flexible and longer lasting. You can imagine the trial and error of that process. The smell of boiling fat, the sticky hands, the satisfaction when the result stayed soft instead of rotting. You step outside into the pale daylight. The cold strikes your face like a slap, but your clothing dulls the pain. You can feel the heat trapped inside your layers, the difference between bone-deep chill and tolerable discomfort. A few others step out beside you, their cloaks shifting in the wind like the movements of large, slow birds. You notice how some wear hoods pulled tight, others wrap long strips around their legs. Every design is different, adapted from what materials are available. A mother adjusts the fur around her child's shoulders, tucking in a piece of moss as padding. A man kneels to tighten the rawhide straps that hold his boots together. The small gestures are tender, practical, and timeless. The academic world remains unsure about when exactly humans began to decorate their clothing. Tiny shell beads and pierced teeth have been found sewn into ancient garments, hinting at beauty layered atop necessity. You picture that the sparkle of shells in dim light, the gentle rattle of bone charms as someone walks. Even in the coldest world imaginable, humans sought beauty. The wind picks up, carrying the sharp scent of pine resin and distant snow. You can hear the crackle of branches bending under ice. The world around you is silent except for your own breath, and the whisper of fur moving against skin. You think about how far this knowledge will travel, from hides to woven fibers, from sinew to thread, from fur to fabric. Every coat, every sweater, every blanket in the future will owe its warmth to these first crude experiments. You sit down on a rock, feeling its chill seep through the soles of your boots. The horizon glows faintly pink. For a moment you imagine the people of this time as inventors of comfort, artists of survival. They learn to transform death, the skin of an animal, into life. It is a quiet kind of magic, a ritual repeated for millennia. As the light fades again, you wrap your furs closer and close your eyes. The cold hums outside, but it does not frighten you anymore. Somewhere deep in your mind, you understand that this knowledge will last forever. You are wrapped not only in hide, but in memory itself, the warmth of every human hand that ever sewed, tied, and dreamed of safety. You wake to the sound of wind scraping across the ground above your shelter. The air is heavy with the smell of damp soil, and your body aches from sleeping in a tight space. When you stretch, your fingertips touch cold stone and packed earth. You are underground, where the world is quieter and strangely alive. The walls around you breathe moisture, and tiny drops of water slide down in slow rhythm. You crawl toward the entrance, and light filters in through the narrow tunnel. The transition from darkness to grey dawn makes your eyes water. You squint, stepping out into the cold morning. Snow glitters across the surface, but your little pit house feels warm behind you. The cold hits your face, and you instantly understand why people chose to dig into the ground. Below the frost, the earth keeps a secret: it holds heat. Archaeological evidence suggests that some of the earliest human shelters were pits dug into the soil, lined with animal skins, and roofed with branches and turf. These were not just holes in the ground, but deliberate constructions designed to trap warmth and block wind. Researchers have even found traces of grass bedding and burned stone fragments inside such shelters, proving that people understood how to use the steady temperature of the earth to their advantage. A small but fascinating detail from one site in Ukraine shows that the floor of an ancient pit dwelling was slightly sloped, perhaps to allow melted snow or rainwater to drain away. That means design thinking was already alive in a world without blueprints or rulers. Every decision, from slope to depth, mattered. The difference between a clever pit and a careless one could mean life or death. No one fully agrees yet on how these underground shelters were built. Some specialists believe groups dug them before winter and returned each year, while others think they were emergency refuges during severe storms. The question lingers because the evidence is subtle: traces of footprints, soil layers, and fragile debris hinting at lives, lived and lost. Whatever the truth, the ingenuity is clear. These early humans turned the planet itself into their blanket. You duck back inside and feel how the air changes immediately. The sound of the wind fades into a dull hum. The walls radiate a soft, steady heat, faint but comforting. The ceiling is low, forcing you to crouch, but that closeness traps warmth. You can smell the mixture of soil and old hides, a scent that feels both safe and earthy. It reminds you of the smell after rain, when the ground exhales life. Someone beside you adjusts a wall panel made of woven sticks. Light seeps through the gaps in tiny golden stripes. The glow makes the space feel alive. A mother hums quietly, the sound vibrating softly in the small chamber. You listen, realizing that this is more than shelter, it is a cocoon. You are surrounded by the living warmth of soil, protected by the same earth that holds seeds, bones, and memory. Excavations have shown clear traces of underground homes even in regions once thought too cold for human life. In Siberia and northern Europe, people dug deep chambers and lined them with mammoth bones or thick turf. Overhead, they layered grass, moss, and animal hides, creating roofs that could bear the weight of snow. From outside, these homes were invisible, disguised as part of the landscape. It was camouflage against predators and wind alike. An unexpected discovery hints that some pit homes even had ventilation holes, small gaps that allowed smoke to escape when people managed to light smoldering fires or glowing stones inside. You imagine that gentle column of warmth rising through the frozen air, a single thread of life connecting underground hearts to the empty sky. The academic world remains unsure about how common these homes were, or how long they were used. Some researchers think they were rare experiments, others that they were part of a widespread tradition of earth houses. But the idea feels universal, doesn't it? When the cold becomes unbearable, the instinct is to go inward, to dig, to burrow, to find warmth beneath the surface. Outside, you hear the faint rumble of shifting ice. The world above feels harsh and far away. Inside, you can almost fall asleep again. The darkness wraps you like a thick blanket. It is easy to see how people here could endure entire winters without stepping outside. They might have measured time not by days, but by the sound of storms passing overhead. You run your hand over the dirt wall and feel the vibration of distant thunder. It feels ancient, familiar. You think of the millions of creatures that have taken refuge underground, through history: foxes, badgers, even insects, all obeying the same primal rule. Life survives by going deeper. Someone near you begins to stir a small pile of embers, trying to coax a bit of heat from stones warmed earlier in the day. The faint orange glow casts long shadows on the walls, turning the pit into a warm cave of breathing figures. You can almost taste the warmth returning to the air, a hint of smoke mixed with damp earth. As you settle again against the wall, you realize how close the ground is to being alive. It hums quietly beneath you, a slow pulse that connects everything: the dead leaves, the roots, the bones, and the humans resting here. This is not just survival, it is partnership. The earth gives back what it takes. You close your eyes and let your breathing match the rhythm of the soil. The warmth seeps through your skin, into your bones, until you forget the cold outside. It feels like the planet itself is cradling you, whispering that you belong here, that you always have. The wind roars across the frozen plain like an endless ocean. It tears through the branches of leafless trees, rattles the bones of old shelters, and howls through the cracks of stone. You stand outside, feeling the blast of cold hit your face, a force that steals breath and thought at once. The world feels wide, empty, and merciless. Yet, in the middle of that vastness, humans learn to fight the wind itself. You crouch beside a half-built barrier made from brush and branches. The air on the other side feels instantly calmer. The difference is astonishing: just a wall of sticks, yet the chill fades enough for your fingers to stop burning. This is how it began, the quiet genius of deflecting wind instead of trying to stop it. Excavations have shown clear traces of windbreaks around prehistoric campsites. In tundra regions, people arranged mammoth ribs, driftwood, or bundles of reeds in semicircles, shaping small protected pockets where fires could last longer or bodies could rest without freezing. These fragile barriers were not houses, but they changed everything. They turned open wilderness into something human-sized. One unusual finding from a site in central Russia shows curved lines of upright tusks arranged in patterns that would have redirected prevailing winds. It was engineering born of instinct. The builders probably had no words for aerodynamics, yet they understood that air moved like water, something that could be guided, slowed, even softened. The debate continues among researchers about whether these windbreaks were permanent or temporary. Some think people rebuilt them every year as they followed herds. Others believe they stood for generations, small monuments of survival. The truth is likely both. In this ancient rhythm of migration, nothing lasted forever, but some ideas were too useful to forget. You pick up a handful of dried grass and watch how it bends in the breeze. The blades tilt but do not break. You weave them together, then press them into the gaps of your shelter. The motion is meditative, the kind of repetitive work that warms the mind even when the air cuts at your skin. The smell of the dried grass is faintly sweet, almost comforting. A strange little clue tells us that even snow itself became a tool. In some northern sites, researchers have found ring-shaped mounds that appear to be the remains of early snow shelters, packed tight to block wind. Snow, though deadly, could also insulate. Inside such a barrier, the air would be surprisingly mild, hovering just below freezing, instead of plummeting to lethal lows. To a prehistoric traveler, that difference was the border between life and death. You picture yourself standing inside one of those snow circles. The wind outside is a furious blur, but within the ring, there is peace. The air feels heavy, still, almost sacred. The sound of the blizzard dulls to a whisper, like the ocean heard from inside a shell. You breathe, and for a moment, the world stops trying to kill you. Some experts remain divided on whether these simple barriers led directly to the first enclosed huts. It is tempting to think so. The logic is the same. Divide space, control air, create warmth. Each stick, bone, and clump of snow was a piece of architecture's earliest language, and all of it began with the simple idea that air could be tamed. You look around at your companions, each busy in quiet work. One lashes together branches with sinew, another digs a trench to keep water from pooling. A child gathers handfuls of moss to fill the cracks. No one commands, everyone simply understands. The harmony feels ancient, almost instinctive. Survival is a communal art form. Most anthropologists now agree that cooperation in shelter building was as vital as hunting or tool-making. A single person could not erect these defenses alone. It took hands, voices, and patience. You imagine the soft murmurs, the rhythm of breathing, the muted laughter that sometimes rose between gusts of wind. Even in the hardest times, the work itself was a kind of warmth. As night falls, you step inside the completed shelter. The wind still moans outside, but inside there is quiet. The walls of brush and bone flex and creak, alive with the motion of air, yet they hold firm. You can hear the faint beating of your heart and the breathing of others. The air smells of wood, hide, and hope. You settle onto the packed grass floor, wrapping yourself in fur. Outside, the storm builds, but it cannot reach you. You close your eyes and think about how fragile these defenses seem, and how perfect they are in their simplicity. Each one is a whisper of rebellion against the ice. Somewhere beyond the darkness, wolves call to one another, their cries fading with the wind. You listen, unafraid. The storm rages, but you are inside your circle of calm, shielded by the intelligence of your ancestors and the patience of human hands. Warmth is not always about fire. Sometimes it is about stillness, design, and faith in the smallest barrier against chaos. You breathe deeply, feeling the quiet air settle around you like a promise. The cold will keep testing you, but tonight you have learned how to make the wind itself your ally. The morning air inside the shelter is thick with humidity. You can see your breath, but it hangs heavier than before, swirling against the low ceiling before fading into the walls. You reach up and touch the stone above you. It feels damp and cool, dotted with tiny beads of water. The whole space smells faintly of wet earth, old smoke, and animal fat. The air is alive in here, shifting, breathing, just like you. When early humans moved into deeper caves, they discovered a strange side effect of living close together. Their breath changed the weather inside. Every exhale released heat and moisture. Over hours, that warmth collected near the ceiling, forming small clouds that condensed and rained down as droplets. You can hear them now, dripping softly from stone to soil, a quiet rhythm marking the passing of time. Archaeologists have found traces of this in prehistoric caves. Some inner walls are discolored by layers of condensed soot and moisture, evidence that humans once lived in an environment that cycled between fog and flame. These ancient dwellings were not just shelters but microclimates, small ecosystems born from breath, sweat, and firelight. An unexpected discovery hints that the combination of human heat and burning animal fat may have created natural insulation. Soot, residue, and grease built up on stone surfaces, sealing pores and reducing airflow. Over time, these darkened layers turned caves into better traps for warmth. It was not planned, but it worked. You imagine people noticing that certain walls felt warmer, smoother, easier to lean against. Some specialists remain uncertain how these communities managed air circulation. Without careful airflow, smoke from any flame would choke the space. Yet the evidence of repeated habitation shows they found a balance. Perhaps they built small vents at the cave's mouth. Or maybe they relied on the natural draft of tunnels. Whatever the method, they learned through trial and patience. You sit in the dim light, watching a thin wisp of vapor rise from your own breath. It drifts toward the ceiling, joins others, then vanishes. There is something hypnotic about it. You realize that even without modern science, people understood how their bodies shaped their surroundings. They could feel temperature shifts, sense dampness, notice where air flowed easiest. The cave became a living body, with lungs and skin and heartbeat. One lesser-known curiosity is that in some deep European caves, ancient people appear to have decorated walls precisely where condensation gathered most. They may have chosen those damp surfaces intentionally because the moisture made pigments spread like watercolor. The flicker of light and fog could make the paintings shimmer, as if breathing along with the people who made them. The academic world remains unsure whether this was art or ritual. Maybe it was both. Imagine a person holding a simple torch made of burning fat, painting in slow strokes while mist glows golden around them. The sound of droplets echoes in the distance. Each movement of air shifts the flame, and shadows dance over the rough walls. You can almost hear the crackle of fire mixing with breath, the same blend of danger and awe that has followed humans since the first shelter was built. You step outside into the cold, and the contrast feels shocking. The air slices at your face, thin and dry. You can see the cave mouth behind you, a black oval exhaling faint mist. The difference between inside and outside is profound. The cave hums with life. The world beyond is silence and ice. Standing there, you begin to understand how these early people might have viewed their homes as sacred. Inside was warmth, breath, and echoing voices. Outside was endless cold and emptiness. It must have felt like standing between worlds, life on one side, death on the other. Most anthropologists now agree that this contrast shaped early human imagination. The flicker of light and shadow, the pulse of warmth inside the stone, gave rise to the first sense of mystery. The cave was not just a home, it was a womb of meaning, where the air itself felt alive. You walk back inside, ducking under the low roof. The familiar smell of damp fur greets you, earthy and musky. The floor squishes softly where moisture has gathered. A few people are still asleep, their faces peaceful in the dim light. Their breath fills the chamber with soft clouds that drift upward and vanish into darkness. You close your eyes for a moment, letting your senses sharpen. The drip of water, the hush of air, the faint rustle of movement, it all weaves together into a lullaby of survival. In this place, heat is not fire but breath. Warmth is not luxury but a shared miracle that renews itself with every heartbeat. You can feel condensation forming on your skin, tiny droplets gathering at the edge of your hair. The cave accepts your body into its rhythm, as if the earth itself is reminding you that warmth is a conversation between flesh and stone. You lie back against the wall, listening to the slow music of drips and sighs. The air smells heavy, human, ancient. You let yourself drift, breathing in time with those around you. The world outside can freeze as much as it likes. In here, the warmth of breath and stone will hold until dawn. Night falls early again. The sky outside turns the color of iron, and the first flakes of snow drift down, silent and relentless. You crouch inside the shelter, feeling the cold creep along the floor despite every layer of fur. The air smells faintly of oil and burnt fat. In the corner, a few stones glow faintly red. Their light is dim, yet it feels like a heartbeat pulsing through the room. You reach toward them, palms open, and feel the whisper of heat against your skin. It is not fire, not quite, but it is something close. Long before flames danced freely in human hearths, people discovered a subtler kind of warmth. Heated stones, sun-warmed by day or fired briefly in coals, could be wrapped in hides or buried beneath bedding to radiate heat through the night. Archaeological evidence suggests this simple trick may have saved lives in deep winter. At sites across Europe and Asia, scorched pebbles have been found far from any true hearth, hinting at these quiet experiments with stored warmth. One small but fascinating clue comes from a layer of soil in France, where stones appear to have been alternated between fire pits and sleeping areas. The pattern suggests a rhythm of daily heating and exchange. Perhaps someone gathered the stones in the evening, placed them in the coals until they glowed faintly, then carried them carefully to the sleeping pits. It was portable heat, a primitive version of a hot water bottle. Specialists are still uncertain how early humans first realized stone could store warmth. Maybe it was an accident, a hunter resting against a rock heated by the sun, or someone touching a stone too close to a dying ember. However it happened, that small moment of discovery carried enormous power. For the first time, people could borrow heat from nature and make it last. Inside your shelter, you arrange a circle of these glowing stones, their surfaces cracked from repeated use. You watch as the air shimmers slightly above them. The warmth is soft and uneven, but you can feel it sinking through the layers of hide beneath you. You inhale deeply. The smell of stone dust mixes with that faint metallic tang of heated air. It is oddly comforting. An unexpected discovery hints that dung from grazing animals may have played a role too. In some prehistoric dwellings, researchers have uncovered layers of ash that contain traces of grass fibers and bone mixed together, suggesting smoldering organic fuel. Dried dung, when burned slowly, produces steady warmth and almost no flame. Imagine a shelter filled with the faint scent of smoke, the walls pulsing with quiet heat. It might not have been pleasant, but it was effective. Debate continues among researchers about whether such fires were accidental byproducts of cooking or intentional heating systems. Some believe these people managed to maintain low, smoky smolders for days, feeding them with bits of moss, dung, and bone. Others think the warmth was simply luck, a leftover from meal fires that lingered. The truth, like the smoke itself, drifts between both ideas. You glance toward the stones again. Their color deepens, faintly orange, then dulls to gray. Someone beside you sighs with relief, wrapping a small hide bundle around one and pressing it to their chest. You mimic the gesture, and the warmth spreads instantly through your fingers. It feels like holding a fragment of the sun. Researchers have long confirmed that even without full control of fire, early humans harnessed its effects. Burnt bones show signs of repeated exposure to heat, and some contain melted fat evidence that people used slow-burning remains as makeshift fuel. The concept of energy was still unknown, yet instinct led them to it. Heat could be captured, traded, shared. The academic world remains unsure how far this technology spread. Some regions show extensive use of heat-treated stones, others none at all. Perhaps each group rediscovered the trick independently. You imagine those moments of realization scattered across time, a spark of ingenuity appearing like distant stars, one after another, lighting the coldest nights. You close your eyes for a moment, picturing a world lit not by flame but by faint glows. Families huddled close around stones that breathed out stored warmth, the air heavy with smoke and silence. Children sleeping with glowing pebbles wrapped at their feet. It is a quiet, humbling image. Heat without light, comfort without spectacle. Outside, the wind gathers strength, rushing across the plains in long, mournful howls. The entrance of the shelter is nearly buried in snow, but inside, the temperature holds. You feel the damp air against your face, soft and alive. Every few minutes, someone stirs the stones, turning them gently so the warmth lasts a little longer. The smell of burnt fat lingers, sweet and thick. A child whimpers in their sleep, and an elder hums softly, the melody slow and steady. The rhythm matches the crack of cooling stones. It feels like the earth itself is singing. You realize how beautiful this moment is. It is not a grand discovery, not a sudden triumph. It is quiet, slow, human. A battle fought not with tools but with patience and touch. Every glowing rock is a promise against the dark, a declaration that survival can be gentle as well as fierce. The night stretches on. The wind outside moans against the walls, but inside, the stones fade to darkness, their heat lingering in the air like a ghost. You pull your hide tighter, smile faintly, and think of how far humanity will go from here, how this small ember of wisdom will one day grow into the first true fire. Morning arrives without sunlight. The sky is hidden behind a curtain of clouds that stretch endlessly across the horizon. The air feels heavy, as if the world itself is holding its breath. You sit at the mouth of the shelter, watching snow fall in slow spirals. Each flake lands silently, merging into the white expanse that covers everything. Somewhere behind you, the faint crack of stone against stone echoes once. Then again. Someone is trying to make a spark. You turn and watch. Two figures crouch over a small hollow in the ground, carefully striking pieces of flint together. Tiny bursts of orange flicker for a second before dying in the cold air. The process looks simple but feels monumental. Every strike is a conversation between stone and hope. Archaeological evidence suggests that the earliest control of fire appeared hundreds of thousands of years ago, long before language or farming. Yet fire mastery was never guaranteed. Many groups lost the ability to make it and had to borrow flames from natural sources, lightning strikes, volcanic eruptions, even smoldering trees hit by storms. To have fire was to borrow the sky's power, and to lose it was to fall back into the dark. A strange little clue tells us that even after discovering how to start fires, some early humans may have gone entire seasons without them. Ash layers appear in alternating bands in ancient caves, suggesting long stretches of cold habitation followed by brief, fiery bursts. It seems that fire came and went, a fragile companion rather than a loyal friend. Specialists are still uncertain how exactly fire-making knowledge spread. Was it taught from parent to child, or rediscovered again and again by different groups? The evidence points both ways. Each culture developed its own tricks, flint and pyrite sparks in one place, friction fire with wood in another. Perhaps every rediscovery felt like magic reborn. Inside your shelter, the two figures persist. One bends close to the flint and strikes again. This time, a spark catches on a nest of dry moss and hair. You hold your breath. A thread of smoke rises, thin and ghostly. The group leans closer, faces glowing with anticipation. Then, finally, a flame flickers to life. It is small, trembling, almost shy, but it lives. The air changes instantly. The faint scent of smoke fills the room, sharp and earthy. Shadows move across the walls, alive in orange light. You feel the first kiss of warmth on your face, not from stone, but from living fire. The sound of crackling fills the space like music, irregular and mesmerizing. Researchers have long confirmed that mastering fire transformed everything about human life. It lengthened days, protected against predators, and made food safer to eat. But more than that, it changed the way people saw the world. Fire was no longer a threat to flee, but a tool to command. The cold outside could be pushed back with a single spark. An unexpected discovery hints that once people learned to carry embers safely, fire became portable. Archaeologists have found traces of charred wood wrapped in animal skin, preserved like treasure. Imagine a group traveling across frozen plains, guarding that tiny glow like a heartbeat. The ember became a living thing, a companion as sacred as water. The debate continues among researchers about why fire use sometimes disappeared from certain regions. Perhaps storms or migrations scattered knowledge, Or maybe strict social customs limited who could tend the flame. Some even speculate that fire held such spiritual weight that its making was reserved for ritual, not daily use. Whatever the cause, fire was never simply a tool, it was a fragile inheritance. You stare into the small blaze now crackling before you. The light wavers on the faces of those around you, revealing a mix of wonder and relief. The flames twist and dance as if aware of their own importance. Heat radiates outward, softening the frozen air. You stretch your hands toward it, feeling the sting of warmth against skin that had forgotten the sensation. Most anthropologists now agree that this moment, the reliable control of fire, was one of the great turning points in human evolution. It reshaped diet, sleep, and society. The night was no longer endless. The cave was no longer a prison. Heat and light had become companions instead of miracles. You close your eyes for a moment and listen to the sounds of the new fire. It pops softly as sap bursts inside the wood. The smell of smoke curls through the air, blending with the damp scent of earth and hide. A few sparks drift upward, vanishing into the shadows above. Around you, people settle closer, their faces glowing, their voices low and peaceful. The firelight plays tricks on the walls, turning shadows into movement. It feels alive, almost thinking. You understand why early humans might have believed flames carried spirits, why they whispered to it, fed it, guarded it. In the dark, it feels more than real, it feels divine. You reach out with a stick, nudging one of the coals, watching it break apart into smaller glowing fragments. The warmth deepens, spreading across the floor. You smile faintly. For the first time in what feels like forever, the cold seems distant, manageable, small. The flame has chosen to stay, and with it, the long war against the ice begins to turn. The smell of cooked meat fills the air. It is rich, smoky, and strangely sweet. You watch as fat drips from a slab of meat onto the coals, sizzling and hissing, sending tiny sparks upward. The people around you sit in silence, eyes fixed on the fire, mesmerized by the flicker of orange against their faces. For the first time, they can eat without fear of frozen jaws or raw cold pressing against their bones. Warmth now comes not only from fire but from food itself. Researchers have long confirmed that once humans began to master cooking, they unlocked more energy from every bite. Heat broke down fibers and fat, making nutrients easier to digest. It was an invisible revolution, one that fueled the brain, strengthened the body, and shortened the long winter nights of hunger. A single cooked meal could do what no blanket ever could. It made the body burn hotter from within. A small but fascinating detail found at some Ice Age sites is the presence of animal bones cracked open deliberately for marrow. That soft, greasy substance was not just food but fuel. It burned in lamps, greased skin to prevent frostbite, and added calories to empty stomachs. People learned that warmth came in many forms, from fire, from bodies, and from fat. You can almost taste it now, rich and primal, a mix of smoke and life. Some specialists remain uncertain whether humans first used fat as food or as fuel. The evidence blurs together. In some caves, shallow stone bowls hold traces of charred grease, suggesting the first primitive lamps. In others, marrow-rich bones show knife marks but no sign of cooking, perhaps chewed raw in desperation. The truth is likely both. Necessity and invention have always walked hand in hand. You reach toward the fire, holding your hands close to the heat. The glow reflects in the oily sheen of your palms, and you realize that the warmth you feel now is not just from the flames. It is spreading from inside your chest, from the food you ate earlier. Slow and steady. The meal is still working, still burning in you. Most anthropologists now agree that high-fat diets helped humans survive the harshest winters of the Ice Age. Seal fat, mammoth fat, bear fat, all of it was precious, stored in skin pouches, smeared on tools, and eaten like medicine. Fat was energy, insulation, and light all at once. To run out of it was to freeze from the inside out. An unexpected discovery hints that people may have shared these fatty foods as gifts, even before language became complex. At one ancient site, charred bones were found carefully arranged beside sleeping pits, suggesting communal meals or offerings. Sharing fat might have been an early form of generosity, a way to strengthen social bonds through warmth and trust. Debate continues among researchers about how cooking changed human society. Did it bring people closer because they gathered around the same fire? Or did it create new hierarchies, giving control to whoever tended the flames? Perhaps it did both. The fire's circle became the first dining table, the first negotiation of hunger and kindness. You picture yourself sitting there, shoulder to shoulder with others. The warmth of the fire touches your cheeks, while the food's heat moves through your blood. The smell of roasting meat mixes with the scent of smoke and damp fur. For a moment, the night outside disappears. The cold is no longer the enemy. It is simply part of the story. Someone beside you pours melted fat over a small pile of moss and lights it. The glow is soft, steady, and golden. It flickers like a candle, pushing shadows farther back into the walls. The air feels different now, warmer, alive with the rhythm of crackles and low conversation. You watch the light reflecting in the eyes around you and think that this, perhaps, is where warmth became emotion. The academic world remains unsure whether early humans recognized firelight as comfort or sacred power. Some evidence suggests ritual placement of burned bones and ashes, almost like offerings. Others think it was simply gratitude in physical form, a quiet thank you to the warmth that saved their lives. Either way, something spiritual flickered alongside the flames. You lie back, full and drowsy. The smell of fat still lingers in your hair. The fire hums softly, and the air vibrates with quiet satisfaction. Around you, people settle into the steady rhythm of chewing, sighing, breathing. The flicker of fire paints orange ripples across the cave walls, like distant sunlight trapped underground. You feel your eyelids grow heavy. The warmth from your body joins the warmth of the air, and everything melts together: the light, the smell, the slow pulse of the earth beneath you. Somewhere deep in your mind, a truth settles in place. Warmth is not a thing you find. It is a thing you make. Every spark, every mouthful, every shared glance across the fire is another thread in the tapestry of survival. The cold still waits outside, patient and endless, but inside, the world glows. And for the first time in this long frozen story, humanity has something that will not vanish with the dawn: the knowledge that warmth can be created, sustained, and shared. The air inside the shelter hums with quiet life. Children whisper to each other, while adults repair tools, tie sinew threads, and chew dried meat. The glow of the fire flickers against every face, turning the small circle of warmth into a world of its own. Outside, winter has grown crueler. The sky is white with wind, and the plains have vanished under a skin of snow. You can feel the season pressing against the walls, waiting to come in. You realize now that no one can survive this alone. The group around you is not just company. It is protection, knowledge, and heat. When one person feeds the fire, another watches the entrance. When someone falls ill, others share food. This is how the first true winter communities began, people gathering not just by accident, but by choice. Archaeological evidence suggests that around 30,000 years ago, groups began to stay together through entire cold seasons, instead of scattering to hunt separately. Deep shelters, shared fires, and communal storage pits show that humanity had discovered a new survival tool: cooperation. The Ice Age might have been brutal, but it also taught people to rely on one another. One lesser-known curiosity from these early winter camps is the discovery of bone flutes and simple instruments among the remains. It seems that even when the cold howled outside, people made music. You can imagine it now: the soft sound of a hollow bone played beside a fire, the rhythm keeping fear at bay. Warmth was not only physical but emotional, a comfort shaped by sound. Some specialists remain uncertain whether these gatherings were permanent villages or seasonal refuges. The evidence varies from region to region. In some places, layers of ash and refuse show generations of use. In others, only brief traces remain. But the purpose is unmistakable. People were beginning to live not just as survivors, but as communities. You glance around the cave and notice how naturally everyone moves within this shared rhythm. A hunter sharpens a spearhead near the light, while another scrapes hide clean in the shadows. Someone laughs softly, and the sound fills the air like warmth. The rhythm of work is slow, steady, peaceful. Researchers have long confirmed that early human cooperation improved not only safety but mental endurance. Groups with stronger social bonds had better chances of lasting through famine and disease. The sharing of warmth, physical and emotional, became the foundation for human society. You can almost feel it here, that invisible web holding everyone together. An unexpected discovery hints that these communities also practiced a kind of early caregiving. At one site, the skeleton of a disabled adult was found carefully buried beside tools and ornaments, suggesting that this person had lived long past the ability to hunt. The group must have cared for them, fed them, kept them warm. Compassion itself became a survival trait. No one fully agrees yet on when empathy evolved from instinct to culture. Was it born out of necessity, or out of something deeper? The question lingers like a whisper in the cave smoke. Maybe the line between love and survival was never clear in the first place. You look around again. The fire has burned low, glowing in steady breaths of orange. A mother holds her sleeping child close, wrapped in layers of hide. A man adds a few twigs to the flames, his motions slow and deliberate. The warmth swells for a moment, brushing your face. The room feels smaller but safer. Most anthropologists now agree that this closeness, both physical and emotional, shaped the human brain. Warmth and cooperation were not separate forces, they worked together. To keep the group alive, people learned to read faces, share emotions, and build trust. Around the fire, language itself began to take root in quiet murmurs and shared stories. The academic world remains unsure whether these early gatherings already had leaders or if decisions were made collectively. What is certain is that no one here is alone. Every breath, every spark, every act of kindness adds another layer to the invisible structure that keeps them alive. You can almost feel your own heartbeat syncing with the rhythm of the group. The air is thick with the scent of smoke and roasted fat, the soft hum of voices blending with the crackle of fire. It feels timeless, familiar, and deeply human. Outside, the wind still rages, but inside there is laughter. The cave glows with the pulse of shared warmth. You understand now that the real secret of survival was never just the fire, the shelter, or the food. It was the gathering of souls who chose to face the darkness together. You close your eyes and let the sounds drift over you. The murmur of speech, the rustle of hides, the faint echo of a flute. It is the first heartbeat of civilization, fragile yet unbroken, burning softly against the endless cold. The air tonight feels strange. A mist curls through the cave like a living thing, sliding along the walls and drifting into the corners where shadows wait. You can taste minerals on your tongue, a faint tang of stone and water. Every breath becomes visible in the torchlight, swirling like small ghosts that vanish into the dark. Children giggle softly, pointing at the shapes they make. One calls it a spirit, another calls it a cloud. The grown-ups only smile and nod. You realize that in this frozen world, imagination is as much a survival tool as fur or fire. The human mind fills the silence of the Ice Age with stories, and every story is a spark of warmth against the dark. Archaeological evidence suggests that even before written myths, early humans tried to explain the strange beauty of their world. Breath in cold air, steam rising from hot springs, glowing stones, and drifting fog all became symbols of invisible life. To a mind untouched by science, the world was alive with unseen forces. One fascinating clue from deep cave sites in France and Spain reveals soot patterns near cracks and crevices in the rock, as if people were speaking or singing toward the stone. Perhaps they believed voices could wake spirits that lived beneath the earth. When the breath came back as an echo, it must have felt like an answer. Debate continues among researchers about whether these rituals were spiritual acts or simply play. Some think the early artists painted and sang to pass time in the long winters, while others believe they were performing ceremonies of gratitude or protection. The truth is slippery, hidden behind thousands of years of silence. Yet even without knowing, you can feel the magic in the act itself. You step closer to the center of the cave where the fire burns low. The light flickers across damp stone, and your shadow stretches like a giant along the wall. The mist around you seems to pulse in rhythm with the flames, glowing faintly gold and red. The air smells of salt and ash, ancient and sweet. You close your eyes, breathing deeply. For a moment, the sound of dripping water becomes music. An unexpected discovery hints that hot springs might have been sacred places for early people. In regions where volcanic heat rose from the ground, caves were often carved near steam vents or pools of warm water. The meeting of cold air and warm breath would have created constant mist, shimmering with light. To the first humans, it must have looked like the earth itself was breathing. Some experts remain uncertain whether myths of spirits, gods, or ancestors began from these natural wonders, but the connection feels clear. The mixture of warmth and cold, life and death, silence and echo, it all invited imagination. You can almost hear an ancient voice explaining the mist to a frightened child. That is the soul of the mountain, keeping us warm. Most anthropologists now agree that the invention of symbolic thought, of seeing meaning in breath and steam, changed everything about how people endured hardship. Fear transformed into reverence. The unknown became something sacred instead of terrifying. It was not just the body that adapted to the cold, but the spirit. You open your eyes and watch the others sitting in silence, their faces lit by the faint orange glow. Some lean close together, whispering, while others simply watch the flickering mist. The fire's smoke curls upward, tracing spirals into the ceiling. The shapes look almost alive, twisting into patterns that vanish before they can be named. A small child reaches toward the smoke, fingers open. The mother beside them gently lowers the hand but smiles. You see tenderness there, and patience. The moment feels eternal, as if it could belong to any century. Researchers have long confirmed that early myths often began as ways to explain natural forces, lightning, wind, frost, but also as tools to teach courage. Stories gave shape to danger and turned it into something familiar. Even now, you can feel that truth humming in the air. The unknown becomes less frightening when it has a name, even if that name is whispered to a cave wall. You glance toward the cave mouth where the outside world waits, frozen and endless. The contrast between the warm mist and the bitter wind feels like a boundary between two realms. Inside is breath, light, and imagination. Outside is silence. You can understand why these people saw themselves as standing between two worlds, each dependent on the other. The academic world remains unsure how these beliefs connected to survival, but it is easy to see how they would have comforted people through long winters. If warmth could be imagined as a living spirit, then it could also be invited, fed, and protected. The act of believing became its own form of warmth. You lie back, feeling the damp air against your skin. The cave hums softly with the sounds of live fire crackling, water dripping, someone humming an old melody. The breath of the group mixes into one steady rhythm, rising and falling like the tide. You close your eyes and picture it as a living heart, beating quietly inside the mountain. The mist thickens around you. It blurs the outlines of faces and shadows until the whole world becomes soft and glowing. Somewhere, deep within the stone, a drop of water falls, and you imagine it as the heartbeat of the earth. The warmth is not much, but it is enough. And as the night deepens, the stories keep it alive. The wind outside has quieted, replaced by a long, low hum that comes from deep within the snow. It feels as though the earth itself is exhaling. You step outside the cave and see shapes rising from the white horizon, massive structures that catch the first light of dawn. At first you think they are mountains, but as you walk closer, you realize they are houses made of bone. The ground crunches beneath your feet, each step sinking into a crust of frost. The air smells faintly of smoke and fat, the lingering breath of life against the cold. Ahead of you, the great frames of mammoth bones arch together, ribs meeting like the vaults of a cathedral. Skulls line the edges of walls, their hollow sockets staring out into the snow, and stretched across them are hides, patched and stitched with sinew, fluttering faintly in the wind. These are not crude shelters. They are art, endurance, and memory made solid. Archaeological evidence suggests that Ice Age hunters built entire villages from the remains of mammoths. The most famous examples, uncovered in Ukraine and Russia, reveal circular dwellings made from hundreds of bones stacked in deliberate patterns. Some were as wide as small houses and arranged in clusters, surrounded by pits and work areas. In the heart of winter, these bone mansions glowed faintly from within, lit by small fires and oil lamps. An unexpected discovery hints that the builders decorated their homes with red ochre and carvings. On some mammoth skulls, scientists have found scratches forming simple lines and spirals. Perhaps they marked territory, told stories, or honored the animals they relied on. Whatever their purpose, these marks whisper a single truth. Even surrounded by death, people sought beauty. Some experts remain uncertain how communities collected so many bones. Did they hunt entire herds or scavenge from carcasses left by the cold? The question lingers, half scientific and half poetic. You picture small groups traveling across endless ice, dragging tusks through snow, singing to keep rhythm. Each bone carried by hand, each rib lifted into place with shared strength. The process itself must have felt sacred. You step closer to one of the structures and run your fingers along the curved ivory. It feels cold but smooth, almost polished by wind. The hide walls whisper in the breeze, the sound like breathing. You duck through a narrow entrance and step inside. The air is warmer immediately, still and heavy with the scent of smoke. Inside, life feels abundant. Bundles of dried meat hang from sinew cords. Tools carved from antler rest beside sleeping pits lined with fur. A woman tends a small fire in the center, feeding it with twigs and bits of bone. The light glows against the ivory walls, casting patterns that ripple like veins beneath skin. You realize that this house is not just made of mammoth, it feels like it is alive with the spirit of the animal itself. Most anthropologists now agree that these dwellings represented one of humanity's greatest engineering feats before metal and stone. The builders understood structure and balance, distributing weight so that ribs supported hides without collapsing. In a world of scarcity, they made architecture from memory and instinct. A small but fascinating detail comes from one excavation where shells and small beads were found near the entrances of these bone homes. Some were likely ornaments, others may have been charms against the cold. Imagine them jingling softly as people came and went, little songs at the threshold between danger and safety. The academic world remains unsure how long these bone villages lasted. Some were rebuilt many times, others abandoned after a single season. Yet the pattern repeats across vast distances, from the Dnieper River to the frozen plains of Poland. Wherever the great animals roamed, their bones became both tomb and shelter, a bridge between life and death. You step outside again and look at the cluster of dwellings glowing faintly in the pale light. The wind moves through them like breath through flutes, creating a low, haunting melody. The people here must have heard it too, the sound of the earth singing to itself through the bodies of its giants. Researchers have long confirmed that mammoth bones were among the few materials strong enough to endure Ice Age winters. Wood was scarce, stone heavy, but ivory and bone were everywhere, gifts from the frozen plains. Yet it is one thing to use what nature offers, and another to turn it into home. That transformation speaks of imagination as much as need. You crouch beside one of the walls and notice fingerprints pressed into a piece of hardened clay used to seal gaps. Tiny ridges, still visible after tens of thousands of years. You place your hand over them, realizing that the person who made this was no different from you, cold, tired, and determined to live. The wind rises again, carrying snowflakes across the bones. The sky turns the color of steel. Inside the shelters, smoke curls upward, through small holes, disappearing into the grey. You think about how many winters these people endured, how many generations learned to build warmth from death and create light from loss. Standing there, surrounded by these ghostly mansions, you understand something profound. Survival was never just about outlasting the cold. It was about transforming it into meaning, shaping life from what seemed lifeless. The Mammoth Bone Village is not a graveyard. It is a hymn to endurance, sung in ivory and smoke. You turn back toward your own shelter as snow begins to fall harder. The flakes catch the faint light from the fires and drift down like ash. Behind you, the bone houses glow softly in the distance, their curved shapes merging with the night. You imagine the hum of voices, the crackle of flame, the pulse of life continuing, warm and defiant beneath the frozen sky. The night stretches on without a single breeze. The snow has muffled everything outside until the world feels hollow and still. Inside the bone houses, the fires burn low, filling the air with slow ribbons of smoke. You can hear the faint crackle of fat melting on the coals, the quiet rustle of someone shifting under a hide. It is a silence so deep that even breathing sounds like thunder. You step outside into the freezing air. The snow glows faintly under the light of the moon, smooth and untouched. The horizon is black, but it feels close, as if the sky itself has folded around the land. You stand motionless, listening. Somewhere in the distance, something moves a low groan, a creak, maybe ice splitting under its own weight. The sound travels far across the frozen plain. Then nothing. The Ice Age was not only a world of danger, it was also a world of silence. Researchers have long confirmed that dense snow and low temperatures absorb sound, turning vast landscapes into near-total quiet. To live in such a place meant hearing every heartbeat, every breath, every small shift of your own body. It must have felt both peaceful and terrifying. A strange but fascinating clue comes from modern experiments in similar frozen environments. Scientists noticed that when sound disappears, the human brain compensates by amplifying internal noises, blood pulsing in the ears, bones creaking, muscles stretching. Imagine the first humans sitting awake through long nights, hearing their own hearts echoing in their heads. The cold did not just test their bodies, it tested their minds. The question still puzzles anthropologists. How did people cope with such isolation? Some evidence suggests that they created sound deliberately. At several Ice Age sites, hollow bones with holes have been found simple flutes capable of producing soft, haunting melodies. Perhaps they played them to fill the emptiness or to calm restless children. Music, in its earliest form, might have been an antidote to silence. You close your eyes and imagine it now. A single note floats through the frozen night, slow and trembling. It rises, falls, and fades. The sound feels fragile, yet it carries far, bouncing softly off the snow. Inside the shelters, people stir and smile in their sleep, comforted by the sound. Even in darkness, music can be warmth. An unexpected discovery hints that certain caves were chosen specifically for their acoustics. In southern France, the locations of painted animals often correspond to places where echoes are strongest. It seems that early artists painted not only with their hands but also with their ears, turning sound into part of the ritual. When they hummed or sang, the walls replied, deep and resonant. The cave itself became a voice. Most anthropologists now agree that these sensory experiences shaped human imagination. The interplay of echo, silence, and flickering firelight turned caves into theatres of meaning. The sounds of the Ice Age were few. but each one mattered. The snap of a twig could mean danger, the drip of water could mean life, and the sigh of wind through bone could sound like a whisper from another world. You open your eyes and look across the plain. The bone houses shimmer faintly in the moonlight, their curved walls gleaming like the ribs of sleeping giants. The wind shifts, brushing past them, and the hollow skulls hum softly. The sound is eerie, beautiful, and faintly melodic. You can see how people might have believed the bones themselves could sing. Some experts remain uncertain whether this phenomenon was intentional. Did they build their homes to catch the wind's voice, or was it simply nature's accident? Either way, the result is haunting. Every gust becomes a song, every shelter an instrument. The cold world hums with quiet music. The academic world remains unsure whether sound and ritual were linked to survival directly, but the connection feels undeniable. Rhythm and melody could synchronize work, ease fear, and make long nights bearable. In a landscape where the air could kill, the voice became the only flame that never went out. You take a deep breath, letting the frozen air sting your lungs. Your breath leaves in a cloud that drifts upward, vanishing among the stars. The silence returns, but it no longer feels empty. You can almost hear the ghosts of old songs, the whispers of stories carried from fire to fire. The soundless cold has its own kind of harmony. Back inside, the warmth of the fire greets you instantly. You sit beside it, the soft crackle filling your ears. The smell of smoke and fur wraps around you. Someone hums faintly in their sleep, a tune so low it might just be a vibration. You listen, your heartbeat slowing to match its rhythm. The cave, the people, the wind, and the night all seem to merge into one slow pulse. You close your eyes and let it wash through you. This, you think, is what the Ice Age truly sounded like. Not the roar of beasts or the clash of storms, but the music of survival played in whispers, breaths, and echoes. The night holds you in its quiet arms. Outside, the snow keeps falling, soft as ash, and the world sleeps beneath it. You breathe once more and feel the silence settle over you like a blanket. The cold cannot touch you here. Inside this stillness, you have found warmth made of sound. The morning begins with the slow ache of cold air entering your lungs. Frost has crept along the edges of your shelter, weaving delicate patterns that glimmer in the weak light. You stretch, feeling your muscles tighten and release beneath the heavy layers of fur. Your body has become its own small furnace, always burning, always working. You crouch near the dying embers of last night's fire and notice the soft tremor in your hands. It is not fear. It is something older, something built into every living creature that has ever faced the cold. You start to shiver. Scientists have shown that shivering is one of the oldest and simplest defenses the body has against freezing. The tiny, involuntary muscle movements create heat deep inside the flesh, turning energy into warmth. It is automatic, relentless, and in its own quiet way, heroic. Long before blankets or walls or fireplaces, this was humanity's first line of defense. One small but fascinating observation from medical research reveals that shivering can double or even triple a person's heat output. In the Ice Age, this reflex would have meant survival through the bitterest nights. You imagine early humans wrapped in hides, their bodies shaking as one, each tremor a declaration of life against the void. Some experts remain uncertain about how well our ancient ancestors tolerated cold compared to us. The evidence is divided. Bone thickness, muscle structure, and even nasal shape suggest adaptation, yet none of it tells the full story. Perhaps their endurance was partly physical and partly mental, the quiet acceptance of cold as a companion instead of an enemy. You step outside and feel the air wrap around you like glass. The landscape stretches endlessly, white and silent. You exhale, and your breath turns to vapor, curling upward before vanishing. The sensation of cold on your skin is sharp, but strangely exhilarating. It reminds you that you are alive. Most anthropologists now agree that endurance was not just a trait but a mindset. The Ice Age did not reward strength alone. It favored patience, rhythm, and an intimate understanding of one's own body. People learned to read the signs, the color of their fingertips, the heaviness of their breath, the moment when pain became numbness. Survival was not about conquering nature, but about syncing with it. An unexpected discovery from remains found in Siberia shows thick layers of subcutaneous fat in the bones of some early humans, suggesting diets rich in meat and oils that acted as natural insulation. It was as if their bodies remembered to build walls from the inside. Fat became both food and armor, a storehouse of warmth waiting beneath the skin. The debate continues among researchers about whether this adaptation was unique to certain populations or universal. Some argue that groups living in the far north evolved slightly different metabolic rhythms, their hearts beating slower in the cold to preserve energy. Others believe it was simply habit, a lifetime of slow breathing and steady endurance. Either way, the lesson remains. Warmth begins within. You crouch to gather snow in your hands. The cold bites instantly, turning your skin pale. You let it melt and drip between your fingers, watching the droplets fall like quicksilver. The sensation is painful, but it wakes you, sharp and clear. You think about how your ancestors might have felt this same sting every morning, learning through pain where the limits of life began. A lesser-known curiosity from modern studies shows that even mild exposure to cold strengthens the heart and immune system. In ancient times, every chill, every frostbite scar might have made the survivors tougher, wiser, more attuned to the rhythms of their world. The Ice Age was not just a test, it was a teacher. Inside the shelter, the group begins to stir. You hear quiet voices, the sound of hands rubbing together, the gentle rustle of hides. The shivering starts again, a soft, collective murmur of bodies creating warmth. It feels almost musical, like the world's oldest rhythm. You join in, your muscles trembling, your body buzzing with energy. No one fully agrees yet on how long early humans could endure the cold without fire. Some believe they could last for days, relying on layers of fur and the heat of others. Others think the nights were short battles, fought hour by hour, heartbeat by heartbeat. Looking around, you can see both truths living side by side: endurance and fragility, courage and exhaustion. The academic world remains unsure how deeply this instinct shaped human evolution, but there is no denying its influence. Even today, your body remembers. Every shiver you feel on a cold morning is an echo of those ancient nights, a small, trembling reminder that warmth is not comfort, it is survival. You take a deep breath, letting the cold fill your lungs until it burns. Then you exhale slowly, watching the cloud of breath drift upward, silver in the pale light. You can almost see it merging with the ghosts of every ancestor who ever stood in this same cold, trembling and unbroken. The wind shifts. Somewhere far away, a sheet of ice cracks with a deep, resonant sound. It rolls through the air like distant thunder. You stand still and listen, the shiver still rippling faintly through your muscles. For a brief moment, you feel connected to the past, to the cold, to every human who ever refused to freeze. And as the first light of the sun breaks through the clouds, golden and thin, you realize that the cold is no longer an enemy. It is simply the mirror that proves your fire still burns. The wind has softened to a steady sigh, whispering across the open plain. You step outside and taste the morning air. It smells of frost and old smoke, sharp enough to make your teeth ache. The snow glitters under a pale sun, and you can see faint trails where others have walked, footprints leading from one shelter to another, disappearing into the light. Today is for gathering, for trying to stay warm in ways that seem half logic and half luck. By now, every person in this frozen world has their own trick for holding on to heat. You bend to pick up a handful of dried moss and grass, crush it in your palm, and feel how it traps the air between its fibers. Someone once discovered that stuffing grass or reeds into clothing keeps the body warm longer. It is not beautiful, but it works. Every small discovery becomes part of a growing library of survival. Excavations have shown clear traces of these improvised methods. Bits of moss and hair wedged between layers of hide, animal fat rubbed into garments, and even sealed cracks lined with clay to block the wind. The ingenuity of it all feels endless. People were not inventing comfort, they were inventing persistence. One lesser-known curiosity found in northern burial sites is that hides sometimes contain traces of fermented plant matter. Some scientists believe these were early attempts at softening furs or even using mild fermentation to generate warmth inside shelters. The smell must have been strange, pungent and earthy, but in the Ice Age, scent mattered less than survival. No one fully agrees yet on how far these warmth tricks went. Some evidence suggests that people even coated their bodies in grease or oil to block the wind. It may sound unpleasant now, but such methods worked. Fat sealed moisture in and made skin resistant to frostbite. Hunters who traveled far over snow likely smelled like the animals they hunted. It was camouflage and insulation at once. You kneel beside a small pit where water has frozen into uneven glass. The surface reflects your face distorted by cracks. You touch it lightly, and the ice squeaks beneath your fingers. In a moment of curiosity, you scoop a handful of snow and press it to your lips. The cold bites sharply, but then warmth spreads inside your chest. You remember how people in this time learned to use the body itself as a heat source by moving constantly, by eating steadily, by never resting too long in one place. Most anthropologists now agree that daily movement was vital to surviving ancient winters. Stillness meant freezing. The human body, fueled by meat, fat, and determination, was a walking furnace. To stop was to surrender. That is why the earliest hunters were also dancers, in a way, each motion keeping their fire alive. An unexpected discovery hints that people sometimes built layers of bedding from decaying materials, such as rotting leaves or composted grass. The chemical reaction of decay releases heat, and the slow warmth beneath the sleeping pits might have taken the edge off freezing nights. It is hard to picture now. A soft bed built from controlled rot, a nest alive with gentle heat. The debate continues among researchers about whether this knowledge came by accident or design. Perhaps someone noticed that old piles of grass were warm to the touch and simply copied nature. Whatever the truth, it worked. The ground became an ally. You walk back toward the camp and see a man rubbing thick grease onto his skin. The smell is strong, almost bitter, but the effect is clear. Steam rises from his body as the sunlight catches it. He smiles at you through cracked lips, his eyes tired but calm. Around him, others are doing the same, rubbing oil, adjusting hides, repairing seams with bone needles. It looks more like a ritual than a chore. The academic world remains unsure how much of this behavior was practical and how much symbolic. Did these acts become early forms of ceremony, daily gestures of defiance against the cold? Perhaps both. You can almost imagine them whispering small chants while preparing for the night, asking the earth for warmth, thanking the animals that gave their fat. In this frozen world, even practicality becomes poetry. Researchers have long confirmed that warmth rituals still survive in modern Arctic cultures. The smearing of oil on skin, the rubbing of hands before a journey, the singing of small songs while dressing. These habits are older than any language, carried through memory and instinct. You sit beside the fire, watching steam drift from freshly oiled hides. The smell fills the air, thick and heavy, but it feels safe. You rub a little grease along your hands and notice how it shields the skin from the air. The wind touches you, but it no longer stings. You look at your reflection again in a piece of melted ice and see how your skin glows faintly under the light, as if sealed against the world. Outside, the snow begins to fall again, soft and patient. You listen to the faint hiss as flakes land on warm surfaces and vanish instantly. It feels like a conversation between elements, the ice trying to return, the body refusing to yield. You lean back, feeling the slow rhythm of your heartbeat. Around you, the camp hums with small noises, the scrape of tools, the whisper of fur, the quiet laughter of people who have learned how to keep death waiting. Every trick, Every smell, every movement is part of an unspoken agreement with the earth. The warmth here is not luxurious. It is strange, imperfect, human. It lives in grease and breath, in decaying moss, in trembling muscles, in the small courage to touch the cold and keep moving. You close your eyes and breathe deeply, tasting salt, smoke, and something like hope. The night will come again, and it will be cruel. But now, you know too many ways to stay alive. The cold will have to try harder. The air has changed. It carries a faint sweetness now, the kind that comes when the snow begins to thin and the first patches of frozen grass appear along the riverbanks. The sky glows pale gold above the endless white. It is not warmth yet, but a promise of it. You stand at the entrance of your shelter and look toward the south. Somewhere beyond the horizon lies a gentler world, a place where ice melts into streams and the wind carries more scent than silence. You can almost feel the pull in your bones. It is the same instinct that moved entire families long before maps or compasses existed. When the cold tightened its grip, some stayed and learned to endure. Others gathered what they could carry and walked until their shadows lengthened in warmer light. Archaeological evidence suggests that human migration southward during glacial ages was not a single journey but a rhythm repeated over generations. As the ice advanced, people moved. When it retreated, they followed the green back north. It was a dance of survival between climate and courage. The trails they left became the first invisible roads of humanity. One small but fascinating clue found in layers of soil across Europe shows overlapping footprints of adults and children heading in the same direction, pressed deep into ancient mud. The impressions are preserved so clearly that you can see the size of their steps. Some are steady, some staggered. Perhaps the little ones ran ahead and were called back. Even in migration, play survived. Some specialists remain uncertain whether these movements were planned or purely instinctive. The truth likely lies between. The old world taught people to listen to the language of the wind, to read the smell of the air, the tilt of the sun, the sound of cracking ice. When rivers began to sing instead of groan, it was time to move. You imagine the scene now. A long line of figures stretching across the tundra, bundled in hides, carrying bundles of dried meat and bone tools. Their breath rises in soft clouds as they trudge through knee-deep snow. At the front, someone leads with a stick, testing the ground for hidden ice. Behind them, children walk half asleep, their faces wrapped in fur. The landscape seems endless, but hope moves them one step at a time. Researchers have long confirmed that these migrations connected isolated bands into larger networks. When families met others along the way, they shared food, warmth, and knowledge. From those meetings came trade, alliances, and the slow weaving of culture. The cold that once divided humanity began to unite it. An unexpected discovery hints that some groups traveled with dogs or early domesticated wolves. Their bones appear alongside human remains in southern migration sites, suggesting companionship on the long journey. You can picture it easily: the low panting of an animal beside you, the crunch of its paws in the snow, the shared breath as both human and beast fight the same wind. The debate continues among researchers about how far these migrations reached. Some evidence shows that families from the north crossed entire continents in search of new hunting grounds, while others moved only short distances, enough to find new shelter. But every movement, no matter how small, changed the shape of history. Each step carried warmth forward. Most anthropologists now agree that this constant motion helped humans adapt to changing climates faster than any other species. The ability to leave behind what no longer served and walk into the unknown became our greatest inheritance. To migrate was to survive. You take a step into the snow and feel it crunch beneath your feet. The cold bites at your ankles, but the sun above feels gentler now. The air smells faintly of water and pine resin, hints of the thaw to come. Somewhere ahead, rivers will run again, fish will return, and the world will turn green. You look back at the shelter behind you, The smoke rising from its chimney curls softly in the breeze. People still sleep inside, unaware that the earth is already shifting beneath them. You understand now why migrations never happened all at once. Some stayed because they had learned to make peace with the cold. Others left because they still dreamed of warmth. A lesser-known curiosity from ancient DNA studies shows that many of the people who migrated south later returned generations afterward, bringing new knowledge and tools. It was not a one-way escape but a cycle, a dialogue between worlds. Each movement left traces, stories carried in blood and memory. The academic world remains unsure how migration shaped the mind itself, but it likely changed the way humans thought about time and place. When you keep moving, the world no longer feels endless. It feels connected. The horizon becomes a door, not a boundary. You tighten the strap of your fur cloak and begin to walk. The snow glows beneath your feet, and every step feels both ancient and new. The cold still clings to you, but it is softer now, more forgiving. You imagine your ancestors walking beside you, their footprints overlapping yours, their breath mingling with your own. The journey is long, but each mile southward feels like waking from a long sleep. The air grows lighter. The silence begins to break. Birds call faintly in the distance, their voices thin but clear. You smile, because even in this frozen age, spring always finds its way. And as the sun climbs higher, you realize that migration was never just about escaping the cold. It was about following warmth wherever it lived inside the earth, inside the sky, inside the human heart. The world grows quieter as the last ice begins to melt. Streams carve paths through snowbanks, and mist rises from the ground where the sun touches it. You can hear water trickling under thin sheets of frost, the first voice of spring returning to the land. The people around you gather near a fire that burns bright and steady, its smoke curling upward into the pale sky. They no longer crouch around it for survival alone. Tonight, the flame is not just heat, it is meaning. For generations, fire had been a fragile tool, something borrowed from lightning or coaxed from stone. Now it has become something more. Archaeological evidence suggests that by this stage, humans had begun to treat fire as a companion, a sacred force woven into daily life. Hearths were no longer scattered, they were central. Each camp, each home, each gathering had its own fire at the heart, tended with care as if it could feel hunger and satisfaction. An unexpected discovery hints that the ashes of these fires were sometimes buried under new hearths when groups moved on, almost like planting seeds of warmth for those who would come later. This ritual shows that fire had stopped being only a physical tool. It had become a link between people, a living thread of memory. Researchers have long confirmed that traces of burned bones and arranged stones mark the shift from practical fires to ceremonial ones. Patterns of charcoal circles suggest dancing or chanting around flames. The fire was now a meeting place for stories, decisions, and the quiet comfort of seeing light move across familiar faces. You watch the fire in front of you and feel that same old hypnotic pull. The glow touches your skin like the sun's distant cousin. The heat rises in waves, soft and steady. Someone adds a piece of wood, and the flame responds, brightening as if it understands. The group sits in silence, eyes half closed, faces serene. This is no longer survival, it is reverence. Some specialists remain uncertain whether this reverence came from fear or gratitude. Was fire seen as a spirit to be obeyed, or a gift to be celebrated? The evidence leans both ways. In some sites, fire pits contain animal bones arranged carefully as offerings. In others, the ashes of old fires were mixed with fresh ones, perhaps to carry the memory of ancestors forward. Whatever the reason, fire had taken on a personality of its own. You close your eyes and imagine the earliest fire rituals. A small group gathers at twilight, the air still cold enough to bite. They feed the fire bits of fat and dried herbs. The scent thickens, filling the air with sweetness and smoke. Someone hums softly, a tune without words. The firelight flickers on faces turned upward. No one speaks, but the silence is full of emotion. gratitude, awe, perhaps even fear. Most anthropologists now agree that the mastery of fire did more than change how people lived. It changed how they thought. The constant, dancing light invited imagination. It created stories, shadows, and shapes. Around the hearth, the mind could wander beyond the visible world. The first myths, the first gods, the first prayers were likely born here, in the warmth that pushed back the dark. A small but fascinating clue from early burial sites reveals traces of ash mixed with human remains, as if fire was used to send the dead into another realm. Perhaps they believed that the flame was a bridge, carrying life from one side to the next. The flicker became a symbol of continuity, of something that could never truly die. The debate continues among researchers about how far back these symbolic uses go. Some suggest they began more than 40,000 years ago, others much later. But the emotional truth feels timeless. Once you can control fire, you must also learn to honor it. Power and humility became intertwined in its glow. You sit beside the fire, listening to the sound it makes, the soft pop of sap bursting, the crackle of wood, the low hiss of smoke. Each noise feels ancient, as if it carries the rhythm of 1,000 winters. The smell of burning fat and pine resin clings to your skin. It is not unpleasant. It feels like belonging. Someone begins to hum again. The melody rises and falls with the flames, a lullaby older than language. Others join in, softly at first, then louder. The song has no clear beginning or end. It feels like the heartbeat of the fire itself. You can see the reflections dancing in everyone's eyes, small suns flickering within each person. The academic world remains unsure whether such gatherings were social, religious, or both. But sitting here, you can feel that it does not matter. The fire has become something that unites everyone. It is warmth shared, fear soothed, wonder awakened. It is life made visible. You reach out and place your hand near the flame, close enough to feel its pulse, but not its pain. The air shimmers between your fingers and the light. For a moment, it feels as if the fire is breathing with you, exhaling warmth as you inhale calm. You understand then why people began to worship it, not as a god of destruction, but as the quiet guardian of life. The night deepens. The stars blink through a thin veil of smoke, each one reflected faintly in the glowing coals. The people settle into silence, their faces soft and peaceful. The fire hums quietly, steady and eternal. You close your eyes and listen to its rhythm, the sound of the world's oldest heartbeat. The fire burns lower now, its orange glow turning to deep crimson. The air inside the cave shimmers faintly with heat, and smoke curls lazily toward the ceiling where it gathers like a cloud of memory. You watch the light flicker against the walls and notice the colors change. Black stone, ochre red, streaks of pale yellow, where the smoke has not yet touched. Then, faintly, you see it, a handprint. You step closer. The outline is delicate, made by blowing pigment over a palm pressed against the rock. Around it, animals dance across the walls: bison, horses, mammoths moving through a landscape of color and shadow. The figures seem alive, shifting with the light. For a moment, it feels as if they are breathing. Archaeological evidence suggests that cave art reached its height in this age of cold, not in warmth. Perhaps the darkness and confinement made the imagination sharper. The same fire that cooked food and guarded sleep also became a brush, a lantern, a storyteller's companion. In these chambers, the glow of the flames brought stories to life. A small but fascinating clue from pigment analysis shows that early artists used mixtures of crushed minerals, animal fat, and even charcoal from the same fires that warmed them. The smell of smoke would have filled their lungs as they painted, binding art and survival together. To create beauty in such a place was an act of courage as much as skill. Some specialists remain uncertain why people painted what they did. Were the animals sacred? Were the handprints signatures or prayers? The debate lingers because every image feels both personal and mysterious. What is certain is that each stroke was made in motion, by the light of flickering flames. The fire was as much a tool as the pigment. You kneel beside the wall and imagine the artist at work. A flickering torch casts long shadows that dance with every movement. The artist grinds minerals with a stone, mixes them with saliva or fat, and presses their palm against the rock. They exhale gently, blowing color through a hollow bone. The sound is soft, almost like a whisper. When they pull their hand away, a ghostly mark remains a sign that they existed, that they had something to say. Researchers have long confirmed that the placement of these paintings often aligns with the natural curves of the cave walls. A horse's flank might follow a bulge in the stone. A mammoth's tusks might curve with a crack in the surface. It is as if the artist saw living creatures trapped within the rock and freed them with color. The firelight helped reveal those shapes, turning the walls into moving canvases. An unexpected discovery hints that the flicker of fire was deliberately used to animate the art. Some carvings show multiple legs or overlapping outlines, which, when lit by a torch, appear to move. It was a prehistoric cinema, a magic of light and motion that told stories without words. You imagine a group gathered in silence as the artist lifted the torch, the animals coming alive before their eyes. The academic world remains unsure whether this was entertainment, ritual, or both. But watching the walls now, you feel that it was all those things and more. It was memory, myth, and wonder woven together. The fire did not just protect life, it taught people to dream. You sit back and watch the shadows shift again. The walls shimmer as if breathing, the animals galloping softly in and out of sight. Someone behind you adds more fat to the lamp, and the light brightens for a moment. The air smells rich and thick, a mix of soot and oil. The glow reaches deeper into the cave, revealing new shapes, more hands, more figures, more stories. Most anthropologists now agree that this was the birth of symbolic communication. Art allowed humans to share what words could not yet express: gratitude, fear, love, awe. It connected generations, teaching through image what speech could not yet carry. You can almost feel it happening around you, the birth of meaning. You run your fingers lightly across a patch of stone. The pigment flakes slightly under your touch, and you pull your hand back quickly, afraid to disturb it. The colors are still vivid after all this time, as if waiting for someone to look again. You realize that these paintings were never meant to be decoration. They were conversations with eternity. Somewhere behind you, a child giggles. The sound bounces off the walls, echoing into the painted chamber. The laughter mingles with the flicker of the fire, and for a moment it feels like the animals are laughing too. The room feels full of life, full of motion, full of warmth. You close your eyes and let the light dance behind your eyelids. The crackle of fire, the smell of pigment, the whisper of breath, they blend together into a slow rhythm, the same rhythm that has carried through every age. Humans create because they must. Even in cold and darkness, they find beauty, especially then. The fire pops once, sending a small shower of sparks upward. The glow reflects off the painted walls, and the animals seem to leap again. You can almost hear the hooves on stone, the breath of bison, the rush of life inside stillness. You open your eyes and smile. In this small chamber, surrounded by color and flame, you understand that warmth is not only a matter of heat, it is imagination made visible, memory painted in light. The Ice Age may have been frozen, but inside these caves, humanity was on fire. The fire crackles softly, its glow spreading across the faces gathered around it. The air feels calm, almost tender. You watch as one person passes a glowing coal to another, careful and deliberate, the exchange wordless but full of meaning. In this moment, warmth itself is a language. It travels from hand to hand, from breath to breath, an unspoken promise that no one will be left cold tonight. Archaeological evidence suggests that sharing heat and fire became one of the earliest social rituals among humans. In ancient campsites, hearths were often placed at the center of communal spaces, their ashes showing signs of constant tending. Fire was not owned by one, it belonged to all. The simple act of giving warmth became a gesture of kinship, just as vital as food or shelter. A small but fascinating clue from a dig in Central Europe reveals a pattern of overlapping hearth circles, as if families built their fires close enough to let their heat mingle. This design may have been practical, but it also speaks of connection. The warmth from one fire blended with another, until no single group could tell where theirs ended and the next began. It is one of the earliest signs of trust. Some experts remain uncertain whether this behavior was instinctive or intentional. Did early humans know they were shaping community by sharing heat, or did it simply feel right? Perhaps it was both. In a world of frost and hunger, generosity was survival. The more warmth you gave, the more likely someone would keep it burning when your own flame went out. You glance around the circle now. The people are quiet, their faces softened by the glow. One woman feeds a twig into the fire. Another passes a piece of meat across the flames to her neighbor. Their eyes meet, and something unspoken passes between them. Gratitude, affection, maybe even love. The cold outside is relentless, but in this small circle, it cannot enter. Researchers have long confirmed that such shared fires shaped not only social bonds but emotional ones. Around these hearths, language grew more complex, gestures softened, and empathy took root. The ability to feel for another person, to care for their comfort, began here, in the gentle act of warming another's hands. An unexpected discovery hints that warmth was even used as a gift in early courtship. In some graves, paired burials contain tools and firestones placed side by side, suggesting that the promise of shared heat symbolized partnership. To offer someone fire was to offer safety, endurance, and belonging. It was the first form of love letter, written not in words but in warmth. Most anthropologists now agree that emotional connection and physical heat were inseparable in early societies. The body's warmth became a form of communication, a message without speech. When two people huddled close, the meaning was clear. I am here. I will not let the cold take you. The debate continues among researchers about whether these early gestures led directly to organized family structures. Some evidence suggests that warmth-sharing circles expanded into kin networks, each hearth representing a bond of care and obligation. Others believe it was less formal, more fluid, changing with the seasons and the movements of herds. Yet in either case, the pattern holds the sharing of heat became the foundation of human belonging. You reach your hands toward the fire, feeling the pulse of its warmth against your palms. The glow flickers over the walls, painting everything in gold and amber. A child beside you yawns, and their mother draws them close, wrapping both in a single hide. The sight makes you smile. This is not just survival anymore. It is tenderness, quiet, and absolute. A lesser-known curiosity from Arctic traditions tells of fire kinship, the idea that those who shared a flame became bound for life. Even after parting, people believed their warmth lingered in one another's spirits. Perhaps that belief began here, in the Ice Age, when the fire's glow stitched invisible threads between hearts. The academic world remains unsure whether such ideas can ever be proven, but the evidence of emotion lives in the smallest details, the way hearths were rebuilt in the same spots, the way ashes were gathered and carried, the way people sat shoulder to shoulder through endless nights. You look into the fire again and see it differently now. Each spark feels like a voice, each wisp of smoke like a breath shared through time. You can almost hear it whispering, warmth is not just temperature, it is connection. Every hand that ever tended a flame added to a story that still burns inside you. Outside, the wind howls across the frozen plain, sharp and hollow. Inside, laughter breaks through the quiet. Someone tells a story, their voice rising and falling with the crackle of the flames. The warmth between people grows thicker, almost visible, weaving the group together into something greater than itself. You lean back and close your eyes, listening to the music of fire and friendship. The air hums with contentment. For the first time in ages, you feel not just safe, but understood. The night deepens, but the cold no longer matters. Around this small circle of light, humanity has found something stronger than fear. In the language of shared warmth, every person speaks the same word: home. The storm has passed. Outside the shelter, the air lies still, heavy with the scent of thawing earth. The snow has begun to melt in slow rivulets, carving delicate lines down the slopes. The world seems to be waking from a long sleep, its breath steaming in the pale morning light. You step out and let the air fill your lungs. It tastes clean, new, and strangely familiar. The sound of dripping water echoes across the valley. Every droplet seems to carry a memory of ice and silence. You close your eyes and listen, and for the first time in months, the sound is not of wind or cracking frost, but of life returning. Yet even as the land softens, you feel something stirring deep in your chest, an awareness that the cold will return again, someday. Winter is never truly gone. It only rests. Archaeological evidence suggests that as the great glaciers receded, humans began to mark their stories of survival in symbols and spoken tales. The memories of endless winters did not vanish with the snow. They were carried forward as legends of endurance, warnings whispered to children beside the fire. Cold became more than a season. It became a teacher. An unexpected discovery from a site in northern Spain reveals a series of carvings showing spirals and waves cut into stone. Some scholars think these patterns represented wind and ice, the turning of seasons. Others see them as the earliest attempts to capture the rhythm of memory itself, the swirl of time returning upon itself. The world had changed, but the mind remembered. Researchers have long confirmed that myths of unending winters appear in nearly every early culture. From Europe to Asia, from the Arctic to the Andes, stories speak of a time when the sun hid and the world froze. Each tale ends the same way. Warmth returns, carried by courage, by cleverness, or by love. These myths are echoes of the Ice Age, reshaped into poetry. Some experts remain uncertain whether the earliest storytellers truly meant to preserve history or simply to make sense of it. The line between explanation and remembrance blurs easily when life depends on both. A story told often enough becomes a truth, even when its facts fade. The people who once fought the cold with breath and bone became ancestors larger than life. You crouch beside a shallow pool and watch your reflection ripple. Behind it, the horizon gleams with melting ice. You imagine the first storytellers sitting in places like this, speaking softly to listeners gathered around flickering light. They would have described storms so fierce they could swallow the world, nights that stretched forever, and the moment when warmth returned. Each retelling turned hardship into heritage. A small but fascinating clue from early burial sites shows that many graves contain charcoal or small burned stones, even in regions where the climate had already warmed. Some archaeologists think this was symbolic, a tribute to the fire that carried their ancestors through the cold. To bury warmth with the dead was to say, "You will not be cold where you are going." Most anthropologists now agree that this remembrance of ice helped shape human identity. The shared memory of endurance created unity. People no longer lived just from one season to the next. They began to see themselves as part of a longer story. The cold had forced them to depend on one another, and that dependence became tradition. The academic world remains unsure whether the first myths of eternal winter were warnings or hymns, but the pattern of their telling suggests both. They reminded people of what could return, yet also celebrated what they had overcome. It was a kind of spiritual balancing act, fear and pride, loss and gratitude, all told by the same voice. You look around at the thawing plain. Patches of brown grass appear where snow once ruled. A few birds call, tentative and thin. You imagine how these sounds must have felt to your ancestors, the first proof that the cold was not invincible. Still, deep in the soil, ice waits, patient as always. A lesser-known curiosity from northern folklore describes winter spirits who lived inside mountains, their breath forming the snow. When people lit fires, the spirits withdrew for a time, but they never died. The story carries a quiet wisdom. Warmth and cold exist together, each giving meaning to the other. Humanity learned not to defeat the cold, but to dance with it. You kneel and touch the damp earth, feeling how soft it has become. The chill seeps into your fingers, but it no longer feels like an enemy. It feels like an old friend. You smile at the thought. Without the long winters, there would be no firelight stories, no painted caves, no shared warmth passed from hand to hand. The struggle made the species human. You take one last look at the horizon, where the snow still clings to the distant peaks. The sun glances off it, brilliant and sharp. For a moment, the light and the ice seem to merge, the memory of cold shining inside the promise of warmth. The wind carries that memory forward, whispering through the valleys and across the ages. You turn back toward your shelter. The fire inside has burned low, but the coals are still alive, glowing red beneath the ash. You crouch beside them and blow gently until the light brightens again. The smoke curls upward, and you whisper into it, not a prayer, not a story, but something in between, a quiet thank you to the cold for teaching you how to endure. The fire burns quietly as morning rises. You wake slowly, feeling the warmth on your face, and realize that the air is no longer freezing. It is cool but gentle, carrying the faint smell of damp soil and grass. The earth is waking again. Yet as you stretch and listen to the soft crackle of the coals, something inside you stirs, a small ache that feels almost like homesickness. The cold is gone, and still, you miss it. You step outside and see the world bathed in pale light. The snow has pulled back from the hills, revealing streaks of brown earth and the first hints of green. Birds hop along the edges of melting streams. The sky is blue again, wide and tender. It should feel like victory, but instead, it feels quiet, fragile, almost too easy. Modern life has made this feeling familiar. Central heating hums in walls. Fireplaces flicker at the touch of a button. Blankets come from machines instead of animals. Warmth has become ordinary. Yet something ancient in you still longs for the days when it meant survival, when every spark had weight. You can sense the difference now. The warmth you earn and the warmth you buy are not the same. Researchers have long confirmed that modern comfort has changed how the human body experiences temperature. We adapt less, endure less, and rarely feel the deep contrast between cold and heat that our ancestors lived with every day. The rhythm of endurance has quieted, replaced by constant balance. It is safer, but something of the old thrill has vanished. An unexpected discovery from cultural studies suggests that people today still chase artificial echoes of that struggle. Ice baths, mountain hikes, winter swimming, all rituals that remind the body of its old power. The same instinct that once drove humans to conquer frost still whispers in us, even inside warm rooms. The body remembers the thrill of fighting cold and winning. Some specialists remain uncertain whether this longing is nostalgia or instinct. Perhaps it is both. Beneath modern clothing and heated walls, the body still carries the memory of shivering beside ancient fires. The story of warmth is not finished. It continues every time you reach for a coat or light a candle in the dark. You walk a little farther from your shelter. The grass squishes under your boots, wet with melting frost. A soft wind brushes your face, carrying the scent of pine and smoke. You can hear a river rushing nearby. Freed from its icy prison, you stop at its edge and watch the sunlight glint off the surface. The sound is peaceful, steady, eternal. A small but fascinating observation from anthropology notes that the return of warmth after the Ice Age reshaped not just landscapes but imagination. Myths shifted from survival to abundance, from endurance to gratitude. People began to celebrate fire less as a guardian and more as a friend. Festivals of light, harvest rituals, and sun worship all trace back to this turning point when the balance tipped toward comfort. The academic world remains unsure how much this shift changed human behavior, but it is clear that it altered the rhythm of life itself. When warmth became reliable, people stopped moving as often. Settlements grew, families expanded, The story of civilization began not in invention, but in the steady glow of a lasting hearth. You sit by the river and dip your fingers into the water. It is cold, but not cruel. The chill tingles against your skin, a reminder of how close you once lived to nature's edge. You let your hand linger there and watch the ripples spread outward. They carry your reflection in fragments, breaking and reforming, just as humanity has done through ages of frost and flame. Most anthropologists now agree that warmth changed what it meant to be human. It gave space for rest, thought, and dreaming. The same fires that once kept the wolves away began to light the paths of ideas. Comfort made time for curiosity. You think of the painted caves, the music of bone flutes, the soft songs that once filled the night. All of them were born from the first moments when warmth gave people time to wonder. A lesser-known curiosity from psychology says that humans still link warmth with kindness. When someone holds a warm drink, they judge others more gently. When rooms are warmer, people feel more generous. It is as though our bodies never forgot what shared heat meant. Safety, care, trust. Fire may have become invisible inside wires and walls, but its lesson still burns in the mind. You rise and begin to walk back toward your camp. The wind moves gently through the grass, whispering across the land that once froze solid. Every step feels lighter. Yet you cannot help but glance toward the north, where snow still lingers in the distant peaks. There is something noble in that cold, something honest. It shaped you. It shaped everyone. You reach your shelter and sit before the fire once more. The coals are fading now, grey and quiet, but their warmth lingers in the air. You hold your hands close, not because you need to, but because it feels right. The flicker of heat against your palms reminds you of every ancestor who once did the same. The cold outside no longer threatens you, but it still speaks. It says, "Remember me. Remember what it took to make this flame." You nod silently. The fire crackles, answering in its own language. You smile, feeling the balance between two worlds, one of stone and snow, one of light and comfort alive within you. The last night arrives quietly. The sky above is clear, a deep indigo filled with stars so bright they look close enough to touch. You sit by the fire, feeling its gentle warmth against your knees, and listen to the world around you. The snow is gone, but the air still carries a trace of cold, a whisper from the past. The flame burns softly, its light turning the nearby stones to gold. Everything feels still, as if time itself has paused to watch. You look at your hands, scarred and weathered by the long winter, and think of every moment that brought you here. The hunger, the cold nights, the songs beside dying embers. The first fire that caught after dozens of failed sparks. The touch of another's hand in the dark, when the wind screamed outside. The world has changed 1,000 times since then, but warmth has always meant the same thing: survival, comfort, and love. Archaeological evidence shows that as the Ice Age ended, the hearth remained the heart of every home. People carried the memory of those ancient fires into new villages, building clay ovens, stone hearths, and eventually metal stoves. The designs changed, but the meaning stayed the same. Each flame was a connection to ancestors who once fought frost with courage and imagination. An unexpected discovery from early agricultural sites reveals that families often kept small hearth fires burning even during warm seasons. It was not for heat, but for presence. Fire had become a symbol of continuity, a reminder that life should never be taken for granted. It marked the rhythm of days, from cooking to storytelling to prayer. Some specialists remain uncertain why humanity's relationship with fire became so emotional. Maybe it was gratitude for the light in the darkness, or maybe the memory of fear never truly faded. The flames that once saved lives also carried the echo of those who froze before learning to make them. To honor fire was to honor the journey from fear to mastery. You stare into your own flame now. Its movement is hypnotic, its color deep and alive. Every spark feels like a heartbeat. Around you, the land is silent. Somewhere far away, a river hums beneath the stars. You feel a deep peace settle into your bones. For the first time, you realize the story of warmth is not just history, it is the shape of what it means to be human. Researchers have long confirmed that the domestication of fire paved the way for every advancement that followed. It cooked food, shaped tools, hardened clay, and forged metal. But beyond those achievements, it shaped emotion. It made people linger together, made them talk, share, and dream. Civilization was not born from stone or iron, but from the quiet gatherings around a glow. A lesser-known curiosity from ancient folklore describes the fire spirit not as a god but as a messenger. Its purpose was to remind humanity of its fragility, to keep humility alive in the warmth of power. That belief still lingers in every candle we light, in every hearth we build, without quite knowing why it comforts us so deeply. The academic world remains unsure how long ago the first myths of eternal fire began, but they appear everywhere. Stories of sacred flames that must never die, temples guarded by keepers of the light. All of them trace their ancestry to these ancient nights of survival, to the moment when the first spark defied the cold and said, "I will stay." You take a slow breath. The air smells faintly of smoke and pine resin. The heat against your palms feels steady, calm. The stars above seem to pulse with the same rhythm. You close your eyes and imagine your ancestors' hands beside yours, feeding their own fires, whispering the same silent prayers for warmth, safety, and tomorrow. You realize that nothing separates you from them except time. The instinct to seek heat, to share it, to protect it, lives in every cell of your body. The fire begins to fade now, shrinking into glowing coals. You do not move to feed it. Instead, you sit and watch it settle. The world is quiet, kind. The cold outside has lost its power. For once, warmth does not need to be fought for, it simply exists. And in that calm, you understand that the story is ending. You smile faintly and whisper to the fire, thanking it for its company, for its patience, for its light. The flames waver, then still. The smoke rises one last time, carrying your breath into the dark sky. You feel it drift upward, joining the stars, joining every spark that ever burned in every night before this one. You stay seated long after the last ember fades. The silence is gentle now, not the heavy stillness of fear, but the soft quiet of peace. The air cools slowly, brushing against your skin like a sigh. Somewhere in the distance, an owl calls, its voice low and calm. You let the sound drift through you, steady and rhythmic. The night has become a lullaby. The memories of cold, hunger, and fire begin to blur together into warmth that feels endless. You think of all those who came before, hands striking stones, hearts beating fast, eyes watching the first sparks leap into being. You imagine the glow spreading from one life to another, passed like a secret through time until it reached you. That same light now rests inside your chest, quiet and eternal. Your breathing slows. The rhythm of your heart matches the rhythm of the earth beneath you. The world is no longer frozen or dangerous. It is still and safe, a cradle of quiet heat. You can almost hear the pulse of the planet itself, faint but real, like the echo of a sleeping drum. The stars blur softly above, and your eyes grow heavy. You feel the weight of your body sinking into the ground, as if the earth itself is holding you. The air smells of ash and new grass. Warmth spreads through you, gentle and forgiving. You know that the long winter has passed, and that the fire will live forever, not in the cave, not in the hearth, but in you. Sleep now, traveler. The night is kind. The world is warm.